Hello, I'm Anika from Made to Sew and welcome to our short tutorial where I'm going to be showing you how to sew a backstitch. Now a backstitch is a fabulous stitch that you can use as a decorative finish, but it also is very hard wearing. So it's fabulous if you want to reinforce something, and is probably one of the most similar hand stitches to what you get on the sewing machine. Now in this tutorial I'm going to be showing you how to complete a backstitch and how to use it for applique. So let's get started. Tie a knot at the end of your thread and position that through on the wrong side of your fabric. So the knot is on the wrong side of your fabric. Now the first stitch you're going to take, you're going to move forward by about 1/8 or 3mm from where you've come out, and you're going to go in to the fabric, and you can also for the first stitch come along again underneath by about another 1/8. So we're going to be completing one full stitch with the needle coming up. So now we're going to be completing the back stitch. We're going to be going back in at the end of our last stitch. So right in there. And you're going to be going along underneath at the back of the fabric by about 1/8 from where you came out here. And obviously we'll be doing this on a straight edge. Okay, can you see that? So we're going to do exactly the same again. So we're going back in at the end of our last stitch, and we're going to be going along again about 1/8 from where we came out. Okay, going back in again at the end of this stitch and going along by about 1/8, 3mm. If you want to create the backstitch by applique, I would recommend sticking the fabric of the applique detail onto your main fabric first using a double-sided adhesive such as Embroidery. Now we're using a Embroidery here, and you need to draw your letter or motif onto the smooth side of the Embroidery. You need to draw it on reversed. That's the most important thing, to make sure that your letter comes out the right way. Once you've drawn it on, we're going to take it to the iron, and we're going to iron it onto our fabric, and we're going to iron it on to the detail fabric, so the blue of the letter C. Iron your drawn on letter or motif onto the wrong side of your fabric. You need to iron it on with a dry heat, so no steam, and hold it on there for 5 seconds. Once you've ironed the Embroidery or your adhesive onto your fabric, you're going to cut it out around the drawn shape that you drew in the first step. So literally around the outside of my letter. And I drew that on with pencil in the first step to make it easy. Once you've cut out your letter, you will then need to peel off the backing paper. And this can be probably the trickiest bit to do. So you're going to peel off the paper on the back, and this will allow you to then glue or stick this letter onto your chosen fabric. Now it's time to stick your motif onto your fabric. Position your motif and your fabric right side facing up, and think about the placement of your motif. Obviously, I'm actually going to be creating and sewing this before I use it for something else, but you may be doing this once you've actually sewn a product together. So it may be really important where you place your motif. You will want to have the wrong side of your motif on the right side of your fabric. So both right sides of the motif and the fabric are facing up. This will allow your Embroidery or the double-sided adhesive you're working with to stick the motif onto your fabric. Now it's time to iron the motif onto your fabric. For this, you're going to want to leave the iron on it for 10 seconds with some steam, or you will need to use a damp cloth. I would recommend checking the instructions for your double-sided adhesive before you do this. Now I'm happy that the motif is stuck onto my fabric. I have also interfaced the wrong side of my fabric. And I would recommend doing so if you're working with a lightweight fabric or a little cotton like I am. Now for this type of backstitch, obviously it is part of the feature of the design. So I've decided to use an embroidery thread, and I'm using 2 strands of an embroidery thread. I've tied a knot and I've left my knot at the back side of my fabric there, so I've come through with my needle. So the first stitch that you need to do is slightly different from the rest of them. We're going to go forwards about 1/8, 2 millimeters, into the fabric and along again, and we're going to cut, so we're going into the fabric about 2 millimeters from where we came out, and coming out of the fabric again about another 2 millimeters. So the first stitch, as I mentioned, is slightly different to get us started. Okay, from now we're going to be completing the back stitch. So we're going to be going back in to the edge where the previous stitch ends. So we're going to be going back into that stitch, and then we're going to be going along 2 millimeters, which is about 1/8 from where the thread came out here. And try not to pull anything too tight. You want it to sort of sit quite nicely. And as you'll probably notice, I'm doing mine about 1/16, 1 millimeter from the edge of my motif. Now this is really up to you. If I had a bigger motif, I might do it more centrally, but obviously I'm working with quite a small letter here, so I need to make sure that it's quite close to the edge. Now, I'm going back in again at the end of my last stitch into the fabric, and then I'm going along again about 1/8 from where the thread came out. And you're going to continue doing that around your motif. And ideally you want your stitches to be consistent, but this comes with practice. And there you have it, some beautiful backstitch applique. To finish off, take your needle through to the wrong side of your fabric, tie a knot and trim off your extra threads. I hope you've enjoyed this tutorial and you feel comfortable doing a backstitch on items in the future, whether it be for decoration or for sewing things, because it's fabulous at being very secure. Thanks for watching.